Welcome to the AM Update, Week in Review. A collection of the best moments from Aaron McIntire's Morning Update.
Well, a hat tip to prolific author and scholar Nancy Pearcey for the compilation of this data. It is astounding. Astounding. Listen to this. This is data compiled from the Survey Center on American Life, Gallup, Financial Times, a couple of Korean outlets, as well as others. British election study would be the other one. This shows the direction over the past 2 decades, and in some cases 3 decades. This shows the direction in terms of ideology that young men and women are heading towards. And it is astounding. These are 18 to 29-year-olds divided on sex. In South Korea, going back to around 2005, both young men and young women, consider themselves slightly liberal. And then you see the divergence that happens in the next 25 years. By about 30 points now in South Korea, young women see themselves as liberal, while young men see themselves by about 20 points or more as conservative. That's only about a 50-point gap. How about in the United States, going back to 1990, it was more likely that men would be more conservative than women by about, looks like maybe 15 points. Now in 2020 or 2025, women in the United States, young women in the United States, see themselves as liberal by 40% more, 40 points more than men do. The data that Nancy Pearcey shared only goes to 2020. We know that divergence is even more stark in the aftermath of the 2024 election. In Germany, the same story. By about 25 points, women are more likely to call themselves as liberal than men, who see themselves as slightly conservative in Germany. Same thing in the United Kingdom, although both men and women consider themselves, even to this day, as liberal, but women far more so. This cannot hold forever. You can't just have half of civilization seeing themselves as up and the other half seeing themselves as down and expect there to be any babies being made in the near future. And then how about this? This data was shared by the account Amuse, but it was compiled by Nancy Pearcey, scholar, author, prolific. This was shared on the same weekend that this clip went viral. This is a clip from the Netflix show Love is Blind. And the basic premise of Love is Blind is that they have a bunch of people in various locales. Each season it's in a new locale. It's built around the tagline, "Is love truly blind?" It tests the idea that people can fall in love and commit to marriage without ever seeing each other, relying solely on emotional and intellectual compatibility. This clip went viral this weekend. It's of a woman named Sarah and a man named Ben. And this is from the Love is Blind Minnesota edition. They actually went to the Twin Cities and recorded a season of the show there. They are about to get married. They are at the altar when Sarah says this.
I love you so much. But I've always wanted a partner to be on the same wavelength. And so today I can't. I'm sorry, but I don't want that to be misunderstood. I still love you and everything about you is amazing. Mm-hmm. And I care about you so much.
I care about you too. And I love you so much. And I know I want to stay with you and keep growing our relationship if you'll let me.
No, bro.
I feel like I know him. Really.
Yeah.
I remember, I asked him about, Black Lives Matter, and I'm no expert. But, when I asked him about it, he was
there
I
guess
I never really thought too much about it. That affected me, especially in our own city. How could it not? How did it not make you think about something? I asked him, too, what his church's views are, and he said he didn't know. And so then I watched a sermon online
from his church
about sexual identity.
Okay.
And it was traditional. I told that to Ben, and he doesn't really have much to say about it,
Oh, the sweet serendipity of that data compiled by Nancy Pearcey. and this clip from Love is Blind going viral on the same weekend. That's the story of Sarah and Ben on Love is Blind. Sarah dumps Ben at the altar. The reasons being that he doesn't care about Black Lives Matter and that his church has traditional views on marriage. Now, I've been told that his church is actually mischaracterized there and that they're actually pretty leftward on the issue of marriage and gender. But this woman would not marry this man because he's not left-wing enough. He's not a communist enough for her. Here's the problem. That young man should know what his church teaches. He should have opinions formed about Black Lives Matter. But he's kind of lazy on things that are important. That woman that you just heard there, she's a bride of the state, a bot. Whatever the regime wants, the old regime in this case, whatever the regime wants, I want, because in truth, I'm never truly getting married to another man. I'm already married to the state. And so what you're seeing in some of the data that we just talked about is that it's not so much, I don't think, yet, at least not in Gen X and millennials. I do have more optimism for the Zoomers, though. I'm not sure what we're seeing amongst millennials and especially Xers is so much they're getting more conservative as they are. They're just not lefties. But that's not sufficient. And so you have this disconnect here, and it's growing by the year between young men and young women. The young women are already married. They're brides of the state. They're bots. The young men, and I'm hoping that I'm wrong, the young men are not engaged enough in the right ways.
You're listening to the AM Update, Week in Review. Follow on X and Instagram at Real AM Update.
Governor Poop Map of the great state of California decided to start a podcast with the goal, ostensibly, of rehabbing his public image at a national level ahead of the 2028 Democrat primary. That's the whole reason why he did this. Now, credit to him, as much credit as I can give a communist for coming up with an original idea. He thought it would be a good idea for him to start his podcast with a series of interviews with generals and lieutenants from the world of MAGA. His very first guest was TPUSA's Charlie Kirk.
It's like you right now should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
right.
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed?
So that is fascinating. Just fascinating. There's California Governor Gavin Newsom just saying, yeah, okay, we need to get the men out of female athletics. But we got to be nice about it. He also went, if you go back and you listen to him, he said, yeah, it's easy to say that we got to get the dudes out of the women's athletics. That's not easy for everybody to say, Governor Newsom. And then there's this. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was asked about Governor Newsom's comments on trans so-called participation in female sports. Here was his answer.
Men and girls in sports. I haven't seen
total brain malfunction.
His comments. What Democrats opposed was unleashing sexual predators on girls throughout the United States of America.
That's the Minions. What? Again, as we talked about on Friday, if I'm a tranny, if I'm a troon, listening to that from Hakeem Jeffries, I'm thinking, is he talking about me? Here's what I think is happening in the Democrat Party. Hakeem Jeffries wasn't the only one. Gavin Newsom set off a firestorm of individuals and groups getting on his tail, left-wing groups getting on his tail for not towing the line lock, stock, and barrel on the issue of dudes who feel pretty spiking volleyballs into your daughter's faces. He started a mini civil war over there. Democrats are going to have to, and they're realizing, I think right now, some of them, like Gavin Newsom, are realizing that we cannot continue to emphasize this issue and expect to have national relevance in the short term or long run. But here's the dynamic that's going on in the Democrat Party right now. They have what I would characterize as a Prince Rupert's drop dynamic going on in the Democrat Party right now. You ever seen a video of Prince Rupert's drop? Prince Rupert's drop is what happens when you pour molten glass into a vat of chilled water or cold water. That causes that glass to cool rapidly. And it creates this really interesting phenomenon where you've got this kind of tear-shaped piece of glass that's pretty much indestructible on the fat part of the glass, the actual teardrop. But there's this tiny little tail that goes out several inches from the main part of the drop. Like I said, that drop is basically indestructible glass. But if you just flick the small end of Prince Rupert's drop with just your fingernail, the entire thing explodes. I think that dynamic is at play right now in the Democrat Party. They realize that, yes, as a coalition together, they are strong, but if they flick any of their most maybe inane, small, but most left-wing factions, the entire thing could explode. And so they're stuck. And on the issue of the most basic fact of creation, what is a man and what is a woman? This party could not deserve this dynamic more. And now here's this. If you haven't seen this yet or heard this yet, this is well worth the next 3 minutes of your life. Sam Seder is an atheist for all intents and purposes. He describes himself as something other here in what you're about to listen to. He went on the Jubilee channel. We've played clips from Jubilee before. It's when one person of one worldview sits down and debates 20 people of another worldview. He was recently on this Jubilee channel debating MAGA, individuals from the world of MAGA. Now, Sam Seder, like I said, he's a somewhat well-known atheist, unreformed Jew. He describes himself as something else in this clip, but he's an atheist for all intents and purposes. He was absolutely disemboweled rhetorically in 3 minutes by this individual who I've never heard of, and I don't even know whose name it is, on the topic of morality and religion. Listen up.
Hey. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so I would like to touch on the religious fundamentalist aspect.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with the religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really theocrats, is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't. But
morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference. So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist? Utilitarian?
I don't really bother myself with being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to a preference. So if you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society. Okay. We have laws that we have decided as a society in a democratic way. And for some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean, it would be
morally right under your
not
view.
Morally right. No. I'm not talking about morals.
Okay,
here.
so here's where I'm getting to, right? Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off of.
I believe you can have an ethical framework without religion.
And if we take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates. You have a reproductive dead end, so two men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation where you do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem. I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good. Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society has decided...
Should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults, it's a different thing than...
Okay, so you're okay with a 45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest?
No.
If they consent, you're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's not beneficial.
Right, there's duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides those duties. Life isn't about freedom and exercising what you want.
I mean, well, you want to impose your religious doctrine on me, and I don't want that.
You just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
Wow. So in 3 minutes, Sam Seder, who is very pleased with himself indeed, by the way, always at all times, lowering himself to debate MAGA trash or garbage if your name is Joe Biden. That's probably how he sees the world of MAGA. In 3 minutes, Sam Seder goes from saying, I don't want you to impose your religious, fundamentalist, theocratic views on me. He goes from that to admitting, although he says he's not admitting, but he is admitting that under his worldview, it would be permissible for a man, a 45-year-old father, to marry his 19-year-old daughter. The irony of this happening the same day that the previous clip we talked about in Congress earlier in the program, where Congressman Keith Self called Sarah McBride, who is a dude, called him Mr. The irony is not and should not be lost on you. Under one worldview, the worldview that claims it does not want theocratic fascism shoved down their throats, they will lose their bowels if you do not use the proper pronouns at all times for all people. Proper, of course, being the operative word there. That's the same worldview. It's absolutely chaos. It's absolutely chaos. That worldview cannot hold under its own weight. It fell apart in 3 minutes as Sam Seder debated a guy that I've never heard of, never seen before. Fell apart in 3 minutes. It's chaotic. But as I've always said, chaos is the language of hell.
You're listening to the AM Update, Week in Review. Follow on X and Instagram at Real AM Update.
I'm not going to describe too many or really any of these, but if you've been on X or social media in recent days, no doubt you have seen several JD Vance memes. Just scrolling through the Twitter feed as I do right now, or the X feed, still call it Twitter. Basically, any version of any GIF or meme you have ever seen, people have transposed JD Vance's face onto the subject of those memes or GIFs. It's really hilarious, and I love it. Here's what's interesting, though. Both the left and the right love this meme. The right loves it because it's just funny. More on that in a little bit. The left loves it because they think they're making fun of him. They think they're bullying him. But that's not really what's happening here. Now, if you're over the age of like 45 or 50, I would posit that beyond just maybe shock value or that's kind of mildly amusing, you probably don't understand why this is so funny to the younger generations. And heck, I can't even explain. I think it's just a combination of irreverence and irony. That basically, They're putting JD Vance, is superimposing his face onto like historical photographs. They're basically turning JD Vance into the millennial Forrest Gump. You know, a walking, talking legend, walking the earth before our eyes, been everywhere, done everything. Now, JD Vance was already going to have somewhat good name ID at the end of these 4 years, just by virtue of the number of public engagements he's already done, and I don't see any signs of him slowing down. So he was already going to have pretty good name ID coming out of these 4 years of the second Trump administration. But what memifying JD Vance is doing, you're taking that name ID to a whole nother level. The volume of these memes, superimposing JD Vance's face onto basically every single historical photograph, every single current meme, every single current and, well-known legacy GIF. You're shooting his name ID into the stratosphere. And the left thinks that they're owning him. The right just thinks it's funny. But what's really happening here is that you're not just making him a hero. JD Vance, love him a lot. But as he is right now, on his own, he's flesh and blood. He can be ignored. He can be destroyed. But as a meme, he can be incorruptible and everlasting. Yes, I'm just ripping off Batman Begins, but you get what I'm saying. That's actually the power to the younger generations, I think, of memifying somebody. You're not just a person, you're a meme. That has massive and broad implications politically, I think, for JD Vance going forward if this trend online continues. And certainly shows no signs of slowing down. We got our poll of the week, the memification of JD Vance. I gave you 4 options. Other, comment below. In third place was I don't understand the memes with 16.5%. Second place, I understand the memes, I don't care. That's in second place with 25%. And in first place, 55.5% say you understand the memes and you enjoy them. A couple of people said, including Miss USA 1776, I don't understand and I do enjoy. You know what? Having thought about it a little bit more, that's kind of where I am. I don't understand all the memes, but that kind of makes them more funny sometimes. Justin Plaster says, I understand, enjoy, and think it's potentially very impactful culturally. A turn has begun in which common sense, logic, reason, morality maybe are cool again, or as much as it can be in negative world. So I pretty much agree with the first part of that, and that's what I was trying to articulate the other day, is that we are as close to the internet being real life as we ever have been. And so what happens when the internet as real life actually has ubiquitous memes of one key political figure? That figure rises to level of pop culture lore that could not be done otherwise. That's what I was trying to kind of hint at the other day, or get at the other day. Erica Svanberg says, why do we have to analyze everything? It's just funny. Well, I don't know. I curate topics every morning for you, and so we got to have some things to talk about. And I thought maybe the dichotomy here of seeing the left and right both enjoying the exact same thing was interesting, and so I thought that was worth analysis. Steph says, don't understand, don't care. Vance, though. Valerius Altushol says, understand, enjoy more and more every single day. Spang308 says, the more of a pop culture icon he can become helps solidify his chances of winning in 2028. If he can make further inroads with 18 to 29-year-old voters and keep Trump's MAGA coalition, he'll be tough to beat. Yeah, I don't think the memification of him alone will send him to the White House, but it doesn't hurt anything at all. Alex Pfeiffer says, reminds me of the time everyone on both sides were making memes of Bernie Sanders all bundled up wearing a mask. I think the original photo was him at Biden's inauguration. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, but this has gone way beyond the reach of that meme. But it is kind of like that. All right, that's going to do it for another week. Back at it again tomorrow.
This has been the AM Update Week in Review. The AM Update will be back on Monday and every weekday at 4 a.m. Eastern Time.